A couple years ago, I started a practice of writing down philosophies I want to try to live my life by. And I just keep them on a note in my phone. And I like to revisit them every now and then to see if they still resonate with me or if I have any others to add. So I just wanted to share a few with you all today.
Number 1. All humans are inherently good.
I really believe this. Babies aren't born knowing how to hate or act with malintent towards someone. Sure, they might be scared of something or someone that's new, but hating is something learned from their environment. Babies are curious, they're playful, they want to enjoy life and connect with people. I think we're all born as these sort of blank slates, and from the moment we're born, every interaction we have with someone and every experience leaves a mark on that slate. Over time, these marks accumulate and they influence the person we become. Personally, there are people in my life I find it hard to be around, and I'm sure you all can relate to this too. I like to remember this philosophy in those relationships because it helps me be a bit more understanding. At the very least, I can respect that person for their inherent humanity. Also, it's a reminder that this person has a story, and I probably only know a really small percentage of it. Now, this is not a justification for harmful words or actions. I believe that we're each responsible for our own development, despite what has happened in the past. But I don't think respecting someone for their inherent humanity and goodness and holding them accountable for their words and actions are mutually exclusive.
Number 2. Say yes to things that scare you.
This philosophy is talking about saying yes to opportunities that push you out of your comfort zone. Doing something out of your comfort zone always teaches you something new. For example, in between high school and college, I took a gap year and I split my time between Ecuador and Thailand. Now, I could have latched on to any number of excuses to not go on this gap year. Like, well, I'm going to be a year behind all my friends who are going straight to college, and I'm not going to know anyone when I go in the next year. Or, I've never traveled alone by myself. I don't know if I can do it. I was scared as hell traveling alone for the first time. And I was homesick for the first 2 months. But I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. I learned so many things. I learned how to cook for myself and others. I learned how to navigate foreign places. And I learned how to communicate with people who spoke a completely different language than I did. Anytime I've said yes to a scary opportunity, even if it hasn't worked out the way I expected or the way I wanted, I have always learned something new.
Number 3. If something won't matter 5 years from now, it's worth letting go.
I remember the day I learned this lesson. Staying in the thread of my gap year, day 3, I was traveling on a bus, and I had read that you shouldn't put your backpack on the floor because there are some really good pickpocketers out there. So I had my backpack in my lap, but then I fell victim to this incredibly well thought out scheme to get me to put my backpack on the ground. And sure enough, when I pulled my backpack out, no laptop, no book, everything was gone. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment for a couple weeks. Then finally someone told me, think about it this way. Your laptop is replaceable. Your life isn't. And that really put things into perspective for me. And then I started to think, you know what, in 4 or 5 years, I'm not going to be thinking about this laptop anymore. And sure enough, after 4 or 5 years, I wasn't thinking about this laptop. Now, while I learned this lesson in relation to material possessions, as I got older, I found that this is also applicable to relationships, especially in the moments when we want to retaliate for something someone did to us, when we're caught up in the heat of the moment and all the emotion. Because more likely than not, in a couple years, that argument we were having, we probably won't even remember.
Number 4. Behind every criticism is a desire.
Okay, whenever I've caught myself criticizing and thought about this, I've always been able to find the desire. It's incredible. It always works. For example, when I say something like, "Why did you do that?" Okay, that's not a direct criticism per se, but the point here is I'm not communicating what I actually want to say. What I actually want to say when I say, "Why did you do that?" is I would have liked you to do it some other way, or I don't like how you did that. I think asking why questions a lot of the time is a reflection of our emotion and not what we actually want to communicate. And it can add more fuel to the fire and take away from what could be a productive dialogue that results in mutual understanding.
Number 5. Something admirable can be found in everyone, and it's up to me to find it.
This is probably my favorite philosophy, and as I was working on the script for this video, I got to put it into practice. I was sitting at this coffee shop, and there was this woman sitting at another table. And I noticed that every time a new customer would come and sit down, she'd go up to them and ask them for money. And I started to get annoyed. Now, I don't know why I got annoyed. That's another story. But the point here is, since I was writing this script, I was like, okay, let me try to put this into practice. And so what I found admirable in her was her courage and her resilience. For over an hour, she was going up to customers and asking them for money. And it didn't matter how many times she got rejected. She would keep doing it. If I were in her position, I don't know if I could really do that. What's interesting is what I found to be admirable in her is an area of my life that I want to give more attention to. And beyond that, this philosophy is just awesome because it's such a good way to inject positivity into your life.
Number 6. Any feeling of superiority to another human is a lie.
Okay, what I mean by this is anytime I have this feeling, it should be a reminder for me to step back and think about where it's coming from and is it actually true? I define superiority as something we feel when we measure ourselves against somebody based on a certain criterion, and we fall higher on the measurement scale. For example, in education, intelligence is the criterion, and we measure our intelligence based on grades or GPA. In the thread of that logic, the higher your grades or the higher your GPA, the more intelligent you are. Here's the thing, intelligence is so varied and can take so many different forms. But all those different faces of intelligence don't always have a chance to show. The systems we humans have in place to measure certain aspects of our intelligence are limited and are not capable of capturing the full scope of what we are capable of. The education system is not an infallible model for measuring intelligence between people. Rather, it's quite focused in what it measures. For example, somebody could be incredibly emotionally intelligent, but this type of intelligence wouldn't necessarily have a chance to shine through in a traditional school setting. To give a personal example as it relates to GPA and intelligence, in high school I graduated second out of a class of around 400 people. And back then, my understanding of intelligence was so narrow. Essentially, how well you did in school was how smart you were as a person. That's how I used to think. And so any feelings of superiority I might have had in relation to my peers would have been based in a lie, because intelligence is so much more than that. Now sure, you might objectively be better than someone at something if you have a scale you're measuring on. But this has no bearing on someone's humanity. And honestly, I think that any feeling of superiority is rooted in a need to prove yourself.